Linda's Toyota shook as she turned off the engine. She sat in the driveway of her modest suburban home, the lights off, the children clearly not home. This was unusual. Since last year, her husband Jim had been leaving work early to pick them up from school. He was trying to spend more time with them. It was sweet, but there was a hint of darkness that still lingered over their little family. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. It had been almost a year since that terrible night at Morrison's. A year since she had let Mark Lavallere seduce her into a night of debauchery. A year since she had left her husband alone in that club, destroying her marriage and her family. The last 12 months had been torture. Every day was a mixture of guilt hidden behind a mask of fragile hope, a silent struggle to prove to Jim that she had chosen him, at least since that night. She wore her mask like a second skin, embedding it into her flesh with all the willpower she possessed. She had nurtured her new marriage with almost maniacal devotion. In reality, she was torn apart, unable to bear the burden of making up for her husband, especially when he still looked at her with cold eyes. He said he forgave her, but he hadn't forgotten. Today she would try again. She would overcome the pain and summon the spark from that night she spent with Mark and direct it toward Jim. It was wrong, but it was all she had. Linda got out of the car, her heels crunching in the late February snow. It was strange that the house looked so dark. Fumbling for her keys, she finally opened the door and went inside, her instincts telling her that something was wrong. "Jim? Emma? Tommy?" she called, her voice echoing off the walls. She dropped her bag on the hall table and turned on the lights. The silence was oppressive, thick and heavy. Maybe they're at the neighbors? Or did she stop for dinner on the way home? She checked her phone again for messages, but found nothing. She sent a text. "Honey? Are you with the kids? When will you be home?" The uneasy feeling in the back of her mind grew stronger. She went to the neighbors, then crossed the street. No one had seen them. The clock struck 6, then 7, then 8. The knot in her stomach tightened even more. She dialed Jim's number, her fingers trembling. She left a panicked message on his voicemail. She tried calling Emma's cell phone, then Tommy's mom. Nothing. Her breathing quickened as she paced the living room, the familiar hum of their home now seeming like a mocking emptiness. She called her parents, her voice shaking. "Mom, they're gone. Jim and the kids. They're not home. I called, but they're not answering." Her mother's voice was soft, but there was something in it that Linda couldn't quite place. "Oh dear, are you sure they didn't just go out? Maybe Jim took them out for ice cream or something." "No, Mom. It's too late for that. Something's wrong. I can feel it." Linda glanced out the window, half hoping to see them walking down the driveway. No one. "Well, if you're that worried, call the police," her mother said. "But Linda, after everything that's happened, maybe he just needs some time alone." Linda hung up. She knew what her mother meant. The night with Mark, the public humiliation, Jim's loss of trust. Space, after everything. She shook her head, refusing to believe that things were that bad. Instead, she called Dee, her last hope for sanity. "Dee, they're gone. Jim and the kids, they're gone. I don't know what to do." Dee's pause was long. "Linda, have you seen the news today?" "What? No. Why would I?" "My family is gone, Dee," Linda replied sharply, raising her voice. "Mark is gone too, since yesterday." The horror Linda had been trying to contain finally overwhelmed her. Her knees buckled and she sank to the sofa, dropping the phone from her hands. The coincidence haunted her, like a painful twist of fate. The itch at the back of her neck turned into a scream. "God, not this!" She reached for the remote and switched the channel to the local news. It was big news. Mark was a celebrity, a hero in his city, a man who stole other men's wives and they thanked him for it. He was a god among men, and now he was gone. Marc Lavaliere, star striker for the city's football team, was last seen 2 days ago. Police are investigating possible links to his well-known acquaintances. Linda's head was spinning. She turned off the TV, unable to listen any longer, and called the police. The first police officer arrived within an hour. He was a stocky man with a mustache and a tired expression. Linda met him at the door, her eyes wild and red. "My husband and children are missing. I've called everyone. Please, you have to find them," she begged. The officer took notes as she spoke. "When did you last see them, Mrs. Grayson?" "This morning. I kissed Jim before work and took the kids to school. Everything was normal." Her voice trembled. "Please, they're all I have." He nodded, but his next question changed the mood. "We need to ask you about Marc Lavalley. You know him, right? He's missing too." Linda froze, her throat tightening. "Yes, I know him. I danced with him once, a year ago. That's all. Why are you asking about him?" "Just checking all the angles," he said, but his gaze lingered on her, sharp and searching. "Is there any reason your husband might have had a problem with him?" She flinched, a heavy suspicion hanging in the air. Yes, there was something. But it's over. Jim wouldn't do that. He's not like that." Her words sounded hollow, even to her. The officer made a few more notes, then left, promising to call back later. Linda stood in the doorway, feeling the curtains of her neighbors move, their eyes staring at her, judging her. She slammed the door shut and sank to the floor. Jim wouldn't have hurt Marc. How could he? But doubt lingered in her soul. Something dark and twisted, born almost a year ago, had finally taken root in her mind. A seed planted by the officer's gaze and nurtured by her own relentless guilt. The days passed, colder than the waves on Lake Michigan. Linda called Jim's parents, her voice hoarse from screaming into the answering machine. "Mary, it's Linda. Jim and the kids are missing. Do you know anything? Please let me know if you hear anything." Mary replied coldly and curtly. "No, Linda, we don't know anything. But honestly, can you blame him for leaving? After what you did with that football player, putting it all out there for everyone to see?" Linda's chest tightened. "I tried to fix things, Mary. Every day for a year. I love him. I love the children. Please let me know if they contact you." "We'll report it to the police," Mary said and hung up. Linda stared at the phone, her mother-in-law's words ringing in her ears. "Put it on display." She hadn't exposed anyone, had she? But everyone in town knew. After that night, the rumors spread like wildfire, and now everyone looked at her, whispered behind her back. She felt it every time she went outside. Their eyes accused her, branded her a slut who had broken up a family. The next week, she stopped going to work. Her boss called, his tone sympathetic but firm. "Linda, we need you. You've missed 3 days. What's going on?" "I can't," she muttered expressionlessly. "My family is away. I have to wait for them." "Then take some time off," he said. "But let us know when you'll be back." She didn't answer, just hung up and threw the phone on the kitchen table. Work didn't matter. Nothing mattered except Jim and the children who should have been walking through that door. The chaos in the house began to reflect her own turmoil. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes. Garbage bags hung on the walls, spilling wrappers and coffee grounds. She had stopped washing, her blonde hair matted with grease, her skin itchy from not bathing. A strange rash appeared on her shoulders, and there were always flakes of skin under her fingernails, which she constantly scratched. She sat silently by the window, the curtains slightly open so she could see the entrance, and waited. She always waited. Her friends stopped calling. Her neighbors stopped knocking. Even her boss stopped trying to contact her. She didn't care. She avoided them anyway. She avoided the whispers, the judgmental looks. She wanted to hide in her own skin. She wanted her family to come home. She muttered something unintelligible, scratching thin lines on her arm, and continued her silent vigil at the window. A week later, her parents came back, their faces haggard with worry. The first thing that hit them was the smell, a sour, putrid smell that made her mother's head spin. "My God, Linda, what is this?" her father asked, stepping over a pile of dirty laundry. "I don't know," Linda replied, her eyes darting around the room. "It's been here for a long time. I can't find it." Her mother knelt down beside her and brushed the tangled hair from her face. "Honey, something's wrong with you. Look at yourself. Look at this room. You haven't washed or eaten. Come on, we'll take you to the doctor." "No," Linda replied sharply, pushing her mother away. "What if Jim comes back? What if the children call for me? I can't leave." Her father's voice became harsh. "Linda, they're not coming back. Jim took them away. You know why. We all know. You need help." "You think I deserve this," she whispered, and tears filled her eyes. "You judge me too. Everyone judges me. I can see it in your faces, in the way you look at me like I'm trash." Linda's father seemed to want to say something, but held back, turned away, and rubbed his face. Linda knew that look. He never knew how to deal with her. Her mother came over to cover her. "We don't judge you," she said softly. "We're afraid for you. Please come with us." Linda shook her head and curled up on the sofa. "Go away. I'll be fine. They'll be back." Her parents exchanged glances, then left, muttering something about a judge and a restraining order. Linda could barely hear them as she listened to the silence and waited for footsteps on the porch that never came. The police returned, this time with a female detective. She was tall and dark, Italian or Latin American. She had thick black hair and a delicate but stern face. Linda sat in the middle of the mess, in a stained robe, her fingernails bitten down to the quick. "Mrs. Grayson," the detective began, wrinkling her nose at the stench in Linda's decaying home, "we have confirmed that your husband withdrew large sums of money from your accounts and his retirement fund. He also maxed out the line of credit on your home and all of your credit cards." Linda clenched her hands on her knees. "You're wrong. He wouldn't do that. He loves me." The detective's eyes softened, but her tone remained firm. "Linda," she said, compassion evident in her voice. "Jim isn't coming back." Linda shook her head silently and tore the soggy napkin in her hand into pieces. It was obvious she wasn't ready to hear this. The detective sighed and continued. "We also need to talk about Mark Lavalier. His car was found abandoned 10 miles from here. We know you had a relationship. Is there anything you can tell us?" Linda gasped. "We didn't have a relationship. It was just one night." Detective Annabelle Gomez sighed to herself. It was no big secret that Mark Lavalier had a habit of seducing married women, and deep down she thought that if someone had done something to him, he probably deserved it. But she had a job to do, and right now her job was to get this misguided woman to give her something, anything, that could help her solve this case. "Sure, just one night. I understand. But have you had any contact with him since? Anything that might upset your husband?" Linda rubbed her eyes. "He sent me things. I told him to stop. I didn't want him. I chose Jim. Ask Dee. She knows." "We spoke to Dee," said the detective. "She mentioned the incident at Morrison's on St. Patrick's Day. Mark asked about you. Your husband wasn't too fond of him, was he?" "Jim hated him," Linda admitted in a low voice. "But he wouldn't have hurt him. He's not violent. He's not that kind of man." Detective Gomez leaned forward. "Linda, we're not saying he's violent. We're saying he's missing, and Mark is missing, and there's a connection. People saw you with Mark. They're talking. Did Jim ever mention anything, any plans?" "No," Linda lied, her mind racing. She felt the detective's suspicious gaze joining the chorus of eyes she imagined were everywhere. Neighbors, co-workers, strangers on the street. "You think I did something to Mark, don't you? You're all looking at me, accusing me." "We're just asking questions," the detective said, standing up. "Call us if you remember anything." She left her business card on the table, but Linda didn't touch it, staring out the window. The next day, Dee arrived, knocking timidly on the door. Linda let her in, and Dee wrinkled her nose at the stench. "Linda, my God, what happened here? You look terrible." "They're gone, Dee," Linda said monotonously. "Jim took the kids. Mark is missing. Everyone thinks it's my fault." Dee sat down next to her, not knowing what to say. "I don't think so, but people are talking. They remember that night with Mark. They say maybe Jim snapped." Linda's eyes flashed. "You judge me too, I can see it. You think I drove him to it." "No," Dee said quickly. "I'm your friend. I'm worried. You're falling apart. Let me help you clean up. Take a shower." "I can't," Linda muttered. "I have to wait. They'll be back." She turned away, staring at the driveway, and Dee sighed, promising to come back later. Linda didn't believe her. She finally understood what her friend Dee was really like. She had gladly helped Linda destroy her marriage, and then, like everyone else, condemned her for the consequences. Linda saw it in her eyes. She was just like everyone else. Linda was sure of it. Weeks passed, and the voices began again. At first, they were faint whispers in the night, waking her from a restless sleep. "Linda," they called, softly and insistently. She sat up, her heart pounding, looking around in the darkness. "Jim? Kids?" No one answered. The smell grew stronger, a thick rot enveloping her throat, but she had grown accustomed to it, her senses dulled by exhaustion and despair. She wandered around the house, noticing gaps where memories once were. Some family photos, some of Emma's drawings, gone. She looked for her wedding album but couldn't find it. In desperation, she rummaged through closets and under beds but found only dust. The voices grew louder, now a chorus calling her name, taunting her. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the trash-strewn floor, whispering in response. "I'm here. I'm waiting. Come home." One night, she woke up to a scream. It wasn't her scream, was it? She stumbled to the window and looked outside. Shadows flitted across the street. Neighbors glanced in her direction. "They know," she thought. "They're laughing at her, pointing at her, their eyes burning through the glass." She pulled the curtains shut, breathing heavily, and sank to the floor, rocking back and forth. "I didn't mean to," she cried. "I chose you, Jim. I chose you." Her parents returned with grim faces. The smell was unbearable, a wall of decay that made her father nauseous. "Linda, this is crazy," he said sharply. "You're living in filth. What is that smell?" "I don't know," she replied sharply, looking away. "It's not my fault. You blame me too, don't you? Everyone does." Her mother knelt down, her eyes filling with tears. "We don't blame you. We love you. But you're sick, dear. You need help." "No," Linda cried, jumping back. "I can't leave. They'll come back. You don't understand." "We understand," her father said more gently. "But you can't live like this. Tomorrow we're going to see the judge. We'll find you help, whether you want it or not." They left, and Linda curled up in a ball, the voices buzzing around her. "Linda, Linda," they chanted like an unrelenting tidal wave. She pressed her hands to her ears and sobbed, but the voices did not stop. She hadn't washed in weeks, her skin sticky with dirt, her clothes stiff with sweat. But she didn't care. She was willing to wait forever if she had to. On the last night, the voices roared, and the cacophony tore her from her sleep. "Linda!" they shouted, clear as bells. She stood unsteadily, her legs buckling, the air heavy with decay. Something pulled her toward the basement, a pull she couldn't resist. She hadn't been there in months. hadn't even thought of looking. Her bare feet pounded the cold steps, the smell suffocating her, but she kept going, turning on the light. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her Adonis's rotten, bulging eyes and his mouth, covered with layers of duct tape, were tied to a support beam. He was naked. His body was no longer perfect, emitting only the smell of rot and decay. Linda saw a pool of blood at his feet. The room spun as horror and truth hit her. Jim had done this. He had taken everything, their family, her sanity, and left her with this. The message was clear. "But I chose you, I swear I did," she screamed. Police tape fluttered around the house, creating a grim halo in the pre-dawn light. Forensic experts were finishing up, and 2 police officers lingered outside, talking quietly over cups of coffee. "God, did you hear how they found him?" the senior officer asked, lighting a cigarette. The younger cop, a rookie and not a sports fan, grinned. "Yeah, his dignity was cut off and shoved down his throat. It couldn't have happened to a better guy." The older cop shrugged and took a sip of coffee, the steam from the drink mixing with the smoke he exhaled. "I don't get it. A guy like that, famous, rich as hell, he could have had anyone. An endless supply of models and actresses, any bimbo he wanted, and he does this, slept with half the married women in Chicago?" "I understand you," said the younger cop. "Have you seen his wife? Middle-aged, bottle blonde, face like a boiled rat. That man was either crazy or had a serious masochistic fetish. Like, what the hell?" They shook their heads and finished their coffee. The whole situation was ruined. Someone had talked to the press almost immediately, and the tabloids were in an uproar. It would probably take some time, but eventually someone would start asking questions about the husband and the missing children. Were they missing, or would more bodies be found in that house if they looked hard enough? Or maybe they'd be found in an abandoned car on a country road, in a burned-down building, or washed up on the shore of Lake Michigan. Worse things had happened, and this tragedy seemed like one of those that couldn't have a happy ending. Linda lay in her hospital bed, her eyes vacant, staring at the door. They were trying to get her back to normal with medication and therapy, but she was waiting, always waiting for Jim and the children. The discovery of Mark's body drew attention to her family's tragedy, and soon the whole country knew about the story. The night at Morrison's, the tactless friends who covered for her and cheered her up, the long list of other married women who had fallen victim to what the internet called Mark Lavalier's sick obsession with older women. She knew it was true. Sure, she was beautiful, for a mother of 2 approaching middle age, but Mark was young, handsome, incredibly athletic, famous, and rich. He didn't choose her because she was irresistibly beautiful, but because he hated her and wanted to destroy her, and she happily let him. Linda gladly seized the opportunity to become more than a willing accomplice in her own destruction. All because she wanted to believe that her sagging breasts, flattened from breastfeeding 2 children, or her cellulite-covered butt and stretch-marked stomach made her desirable to a man who, she knew, should never have wanted her. Jim's revenge splashed across screens and newspapers around the world, and Linda became a reviled, cautionary example of a woman. People sympathized with Jim, saying things like, "I don't approve of what he did, but I understand why he did it," often with an understanding look or an embarrassed smile. Linda, on the other hand, was nothing more than a whore, a promiscuous wife, a self-centered bitch, a vicious slut. The public contempt was palpable and stuck to her like rotten shit, in stark contrast to her friends' fervent support and excuses. "It's just one night," she told everyone. But that one night turned into a never-ending nightmare. Far away, under the warm tropical sun, Jim watched his children playing with their new puppy in a large, fenced-in yard. He heard the patio door open, and his girlfriend Maria announced to the children that lunch was ready. He took a sip of his Bellican Sprite and followed the children into their rather large house. Maria was sitting in the kitchen across from the children, laughing. It was cozy, homey. "I'm going up to my office for a minute," he said, setting his empty glass on the table. "I need to finish some paperwork, and then we'll all go to the beach." Tommy, or Jake, as he was now called, perked up. "Dad, can we go boating?" "Please." Jim smiled and said, "Sure, kid. Be good to Maria. I'll be back soon." There had been a lot of boat trips to the zoo, gifts, new toys, and recently a puppy had arrived over the past few months. He knew he was acting like a Disneyland dad with his children, and eventually it would have to end, but only after he had completely settled their new life. Climbing the stairs and closing the door to his study behind him, he accessed his secret mailbox via an encrypted proxy server and read the latest report from the private investigator he was still paying. The police were clearly still looking for him. They knew he had fled the country but weren't sure where exactly. That was good news, and he hoped his luck would continue. Linda was still in the hospital. It seemed her nervous breakdown had been more serious than anyone had initially thought. This gave him a grim sense of satisfaction that, even after everything he had done, still surprised him with its intensity. Damn that bitch! Jim had done many things he never thought he was capable of, things that had been completely beyond him until that night in February when the leap year began. Things that still sent shivers down his spine in the darkest hours of the night. How did Churchill put it? Even a rat cornered is dangerous? That's exactly what he was, a cornered rat. A helpless loser torn between his love for his children and a life full of emotional abuse and manipulation. Linda, he had come to believe, must be some kind of sociopath to have treated him so brazenly and publicly. Worse still, she felt no remorse, spouting nonsense about how much he loved her, that it justified her behavior, that he was to blame for her gutting him and robbing him of his masculinity. And when he read her confession, he realized how deeply she despised him. She didn't even have the decency to lie about what a fantastic lover her football player was. He wondered if part of her strategy, aside from constant manipulation, was simply to make him feel so insignificant and inadequate that he would stay with her out of gratitude for giving him a piece of her middle-aged femininity, as if she were some kind of damn prize. Jim learned a lot from Linda and their friends. He learned about immaturity, deception, and lies. He learned how damn effective it was to turn trust into a weapon to destroy people. He learned it well. He harbored resentment and suppressed shame, forgiving her as part of a humiliating game with the prostitute Ellen. And then he planned everything. The money was easy to get. Linda never kept accounts either before or after her betrayal. He simply cashed in his investments and transferred the funds to a foreign account. He tricked Linda into signing a second mortgage on the house, taking advantage of her desire to make amends. He obtained passports and documents for the children and forged them. He withdrew all his savings and sold everything he could, leaving Linda penniless and himself with enough startup capital to begin a new life under a new name in a new country. He became more romantic and flirtatious with Linda, even bringing her back into his bed. It was all part of his plan. He convinced her to send him nude photos while he was at work, and she readily agreed. He had long since copied Mark's cell phone number from Linda's phone, and using a disposable phone and a few photos, lured Mark into a trap. "Use this number. I don't want my husband to find out you're sleeping with my married woman." The violence was liberating in a way Jim never imagined. The smug look on Lavalier's face as he approached his naked and bound body with an almost comically large pair of garden shears was priceless. Was he a monster for killing Mark? For destroying Linda's life? For stealing their children? Absolutely, yes. He knew he had done evil, even worse than Linda had done to him and their children. But what choice did he have? The weight of his friends, families, and society's expectations was crushing him. Either accept it and lose himself, or fight and lose everything else. There was no acceptable way for him to win or even walk away with his honor and life intact. He was a cornered rat. So he paid his way out. Someday, maybe even soon, he will be held accountable for his crimes, either in a court of law or in the afterlife. But he wouldn't change a thing. He couldn't. Jim Grayson, a friendly and trusting fool who had devoted his life to an unfaithful woman, had fallen into a nightmare of no making of his own, and had awakened from that dream as a monster, an awakened horror, hating with the same passion with which Linda had so cruelly destroyed his love. Jim turned off the computer and pushed his chair away from the desk. Even here, under the bright tropical sun, the monster cast a long shadow. It would haunt him as long as he lived on Earth, but he was sure that from now on he would control it and tame it. As long as he had his children, the monster would remain where it belonged. He would continue this dream as long as he could, enjoy every moment of it, savor every new experience. His nightmare no longer had power over him, and God help anyone who tried to wake him from this dream. It was truly ironic. When Brent and Audrey got married, he was a CAD designer at a large company, and she was starting her own law practice. 6 years later, they were both earning good money, but their roles had reversed. Brent worked from home, running his own CAD business. He drew plans for home and factory expansions, attic and garage conversions, and earned a good reputation. Audrey still used her law degree but worked for Sharwood's, a corporation. She had already risen to the position of senior contract manager. They lived in the London house where Brent was born. It was over 100 years old with high ceilings and drafts. After they got married, Brent installed double-glazed windows and converted the smallest bedroom into a bathroom. But Audrey wanted to live closer to the city center. She didn't complain, but she began a subtle campaign. She would put on an extra sweater and say, "It's so cold in here." She expressed shock at the heating bills even though they could afford them. But Brent liked this part of London. It was also called Brent. He often asked his parents if they had named him after the neighborhood, but they joked that the neighborhood was named after him. There were many parks and lakes, and he needed physical exercise. He had mild diabetes and took pills to control his blood sugar. There were no outward symptoms, but his last visit to the doctor had been worrying. "Your bone density has dropped by almost 20%. "Oh my God. Does that mean I'll need a hip replacement when I'm old?" "Nothing serious, just vitamin D supplements." "Like 7C's capsules?" "Similar. But as a National Health Service patient, you get all your medication free. Not just glucophage, but vitamin D3 as well. I'll write you a prescription." "How wonderful." "Take 1 capsule every morning, but only in winter. Get out in the sun in summer. A couple of cloudy days won't hurt. I want you to walk for an hour a day, or twice for 30 minutes. Their outlooks on life didn't match. Audrey loved clubs, parties, and a little drink. Brent liked to drink beer sometimes, but he preferred to do it at home. He could drink a bottle of Old Speckled Hen in half an hour, enjoying the taste rather than the effect. However, they often dined out and socialized with friends, and he was a good companion. Sometimes he even got drunk. But Audrey thought he would be just as happy staying home or walking in the local parks. The first clash occurred, although it was fairly mild. It happened over dinner. "I'd like to move, Brent," she began, "to a more modern place. closer to my work and nightlife. I love this house, you know that, he replied. But I'll listen. Is this desire to move stronger than, say, a year ago? Yes. Sharwoods has been trying to close a deal with the Chinese for 6 months. You told me. Sounds interesting? It is interesting. And next week, 2 of their executives are coming to look at our premises. Premises? Plural? There are other companies that want to work with them. I don't know how many, but the Chinese are visiting all of us. Do you know who your competitors are? Not officially, but it's easy to find out. This is a big breakthrough for us. I've told you how slow and methodical Asians are, but they've finally made a decision. We're on the short list. I'm happy for Sharwoods, and for you personally. You've put a lot of time into this. But how will this affect our move? I suppose you want to stay in London rather than buy a flat closer to the nightlife of Beijing? She laughed. Brent didn't like jokes. If we win this contract, it will be the biggest contract in our history. And ultimately, it will be up to me and the CEO, Nigel. I'll work out the details and he'll sign the contract. So we're talking bonuses, right? Right. We're talking about your wife getting over £250,000 tax-free. Brent sat up straight. Wow. And I'd like you to finally leave here. Sell the house, and we'll move closer to the city. I'll add my bonus to the amount we sell the house for, and we'll split the ownership of the new house. Of course, we'll also split the choice of where we buy the house. You have to like it, too. Okay, you like deals, so how about this? You get your big bonus, and we move. If it doesn't work out, we'll go on an expensive vacation as compensation. And then next year, we'll talk about moving again. Great! Have I told you how much I love you? In the summer days leading up to the Chinese visit, their sex life had been intense. Audrey was insatiable. They used to make love mostly on weekends, maybe once a week. But suddenly, everything changed. Now they made love almost every weekday and rested on weekends. Brent wondered why, but he wasn't going to complain. He continued to exercise, but walking in the park caused pain in his legs. It was an important day for the Charbu, and Audrey and Nigel had applied for jobs. It took all morning, and she returned home in the middle of the day. Tell me how it went. Let me take a shower, and then we'll go out to dinner, she replied. The restaurant was almost empty, as they were eating dinner very early. While they waited, sipping wine, Audrey told him all about her Chinese guests. They were impeccably dressed in Savile Row suits and were taller than she had expected. It turned out that people from Beijing and northern China are often taller than those from the south. You would have liked the woman they brought with them. Go on. She was gorgeous, also tall, dressed in one of those traditional Chinese dresses in red and gold. We call it a cheongsam, but they say qi pao. It's spelled Q-I-P-A-O. The one with the slit up the side? Yes, she had slits on both sides. The dress had a high collar, which we call mandarin, and covered her arms. But instead of buttons, it fastened at the front with small pegs like a sheepskin coat, but with embroidery. I've never seen anything so form-fitting. In fact, she told me that the slits weren't to show off her legs. They were so she could walk. Who was she? An escort? I don't think so. She was introduced as a translator. The guys clearly understood English, but they pretended they didn't. Maybe she was just there as a distraction. For the English businessmen, so they couldn't concentrate? Possibly. I'm pretty sure I'm the only woman they'll be dealing with on this trip. Maybe they think you're distracting them. The steaks were served. You find all this very interesting, don't you? Brent asked. Yes, Audrey replied. Contracts may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I like all the little details. I mean in a sexual way. You've been wearing me out the last few weeks, usually on weekdays. Not that I'm complaining, you know. She put down her knife and fork. You know, I never thought of it that way. But you're right. Maybe that's why. Don't drink any more wine. I'll need to top it up when we get home. And that's exactly what she got. Brent barely managed to close the front door behind them. They had sex and everything else until he was completely exhausted. Then Audrey proceeded to revive him, and they did it all over again. The bed smelled of sex, and Audrey was snoring softly next to him. He was tired and wondered what had woken him up. He tried to remember the words she had said in the restaurant that he hadn't heard at the time. As he drifted back to sleep, he remembered. "I need to refill." It was a phrase associated with sex and guilt, but it didn't quite fit. You refill fuel in a tank or wine in a glass when there's already something there. When they're empty, you fill them up. Did Audrey already have something or someone? Did she want sex with him after she'd already been with someone else? Was that the real reason she wanted to take a shower as soon as she got home? Perhaps this thirst for excitement had spilled over into her work, so to speak. She worked a lot of overtime, mostly with the CEO. If this desire for sex had taken hold of her while she was there, Nigel would have been the most likely beneficiary. The Chinese clients had left, and suddenly Audrey's mother fell ill. It was a brain tumor. After they visited her in the hospital, the doctor invited them into his office. "I understand that your mother has been complaining of headaches for some time." "Not really," Audrey replied. "She mainly had trouble sleeping." "Well, she wasn't very talkative, but I got the impression that she had a medical background." "Yes. She was a pharmacist and took early retirement 2 years ago. Now I think that was the reason." "I see. Then I'm afraid she may have been self-medicating." "Did she make her condition worse?" "Unlikely. She couldn't have known what was wrong with her. Treating headaches or insomnia couldn't have hurt her." "So what's the diagnosis?" "I have to tell you that the tumor is in an advanced stage and incurable. There's nothing we can do. We have money." "I'm sorry to be blunt, but even the most expensive surgery won't improve her condition." "I see. What do you recommend?" "She can go home tomorrow. She'll be more comfortable in familiar surroundings. Check on her every day and bring her back here if she starts having severe headaches." "Can you tell us how long she has left?" "We can't say for sure, but I would say up to 6 months. The end is near." "I'm very sorry." They both tried their best to convince Sue, Audrey's mother, to move in with us. There was plenty of room in the house, and Brent, who worked from home, could keep an eye on her more easily. But she was adamant. She wanted to spend the rest of her days in her own home. Brent understood her feelings and promised to visit her every day. During the first week, she asked him to have a heart-to-heart talk. "Brent, there's something you need to do for me." "Of course, Mom. Anything you want." "I've had trouble sleeping even before I retired, so I freed up a few pills as a parting gift." "Perks of the job." "I see. But these new headache pills work much better for me. I don't need the others anymore." "And you want me to get rid of them so no one notices?" "Yes." "Why not just flush them down the toilet?" "They're in the bathroom cabinet, and to be honest, I can hardly reach them." "I'll get rid of them for you." "Just don't tell Audrey. She always worries that I'm prescribing my own medication." "No problem." "What are they called?" "Rohypnol. I stole 3 packs of 30 when I started having insomnia. They're actually the original white pills." "Is that important?" "Well, when the police found out they were being used as a date rape drug, the manufacturers added blue dye to make them easier to spot in a girl's drink. We had to destroy all our old supplies. That's another reason I want you to throw them away." "You old minx. I'll go find them." "But I don't want Audrey to find out. The last 40 are in the big white aspirin bottle." Brent immediately went to the bathroom. There was a large aspirin bottle, but it was empty. He rummaged through all her medicines, then checked all the kitchen cabinets. Nothing. He didn't know what to do next. As far as he could tell, Sue wasn't losing her memory. She seemed perfectly sane and showed no other symptoms, and it seemed unlikely that she could have swallowed all 40 pills. So where was her stash of Rohypnol? Maybe she had already thrown them away and forgotten? He decided not to say anything, and went home. Brent decided to take a walk in the nearest park before returning home. When he entered, the phone rang. It was Audrey. "Things are moving quickly," she said. "What do you mean?" Brent asked. "They have a question about our contract." "Is that bad?" "No, it's great. They're asking about delivery times. I always thought they might ask about that, so I left a little extra time. If that's their only comment, we're in the clear. We just need to make some quick adjustments." "Sounds promising." "I think so, but I need some help." "Go ahead." "It's 10 a.m. here, 5 p.m. in Beijing. They want to have a Skype meeting in 24 hours. Nigel and I will work through lunch, but we've been eating too much fast food. Can you make a salad for 2 for around 5 p.m.? "Sure. Will you be eating here?" "No, if we try to finish at home, we'll forget something important at the office. I just want to stop by my place, change, pick up the salad, and get back to the office. Then we'll work until we're done." "Consider it done. Want a bottle of wine?" "No way. No alcohol until we're done." "Okay." Even over the phone, he could sense her excitement. He thought maybe they would have time for a quickie while she changed. Maybe he could help her undress. At 4 o'clock, Brent made 3 ham salads and half a dozen hard-boiled eggs. He packed 2 salads into Tupperware containers and put them in a cooler bag, found 3 bottles of mineral water and put 2 in the bag as well. Then he put the bag in the refrigerator. Finally, he brewed some strong coffee and poured it into a thermos. There was very little left, and he finished it. Then he took the last salad and a bottle of water and carried them to his home office. Brent was designing an extension to a local warehouse that suited the client. The only thing that bothered them was that it took up part of the parking lot. Now he was trying to fit as many cars as possible into the remaining space. Diagonal parking spaces seemed to give him a couple of extra spots. Tired of the salty ham, he finished his mineral water and tried again. But his mind was wandering, and he poured himself another cup of coffee. He was worried about Nigel and hoped Audrey wouldn't rush into the shower when she got back. But everything she did was so sensible. He looked for new lingerie, stains on her worn panties, all the usual things, but found nothing suspicious. Maybe he was imagining things. It was 4:30 when Audrey burst into his office. "Did you make the salads? I don't see them in the fridge." Brent went to the kitchen. "They're in the cooler bag on the 3rd shelf." "Oh, good. Good idea." She poured him an old speckled hen beer and brought it to his office. "Here." "Thanks. For what?" "For being such a wonderful husband. I'm going to squeeze every last drop out of you today. It'll give you strength if you have any left." She started up the stairs. "I only have time for coffee. Can you make it?" "I already set the thermos for 2. "Wow, how thoughtful. Have I told you I love you?" Brent returned to his warehouse. A few minutes away from the computer cleared his head. Now he could see that there was space for additional vehicles at the far end of the building where the trucks were being loaded. In the worst case, an employee would have to wait a minute for the truck to turn around. He didn't hear the shower running. Part of him wanted to check if Audrey had left before rushing out again, although she was unlikely to return to work in stockings and high heels. But he was curious what something more comfortable might mean. She ran into his office with an old bag of salads and a thermos. She hugged him and kissed him. "If I'm late, don't start without me." Brent heard the front door slam and her car roar to life. He breathed a sigh of relief. Her hair was pulled back in an unflattering ponytail, and she was wearing baggy sweatpants and sneakers. When she came in, she looked more attractive, and she hadn't taken a shower. After all, it wasn't worth worrying about. He took a sip from the pint and burped, knowing he wouldn't be able to finish it. If he'd known Audrey would be so attentive, he wouldn't have drunk so much coffee and a bottle of water. Back in the kitchen, he took another sip and poured the rest down the sink. Sad, but the beer would have gone sour anyway. He didn't want her to think he didn't appreciate her gesture, so he washed and dried the glass and put it away. Even that small amount was starting to make him sluggish. He woke up confused. The bedroom window was in the wrong place. He was looking straight at it. It should have been on the right. Without panicking, he stared at it and tried to figure out what was going on. He figured it out. He wasn't in bed. He was on the old sofa in his study. It wasn't the first time he had fallen asleep there. His head was spinning. He took a deep breath, thinking that if a few sips of a bitter drink could cause this, he must be getting old. It was dark in the study and outside, and he wondered what time it was. It must be after 8. It had been light before. Looking at his watch seemed too much effort. He turned his head and stared at the faint beam of light coming through a crack in the floor. It was coming from under the door, which meant that the light was on and Audrey was home. When he looked closer, the beam gradually widened. Her shadow filled the space around the door. The outline of her head was clear, and her hair was no longer tied back. Without waiting for the door to open wider, he closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep. She opened the door completely and whispered, "Brent?" He didn't know why he didn't answer, maybe because of the blanket she had covered him with, or maybe because he felt awkward. In any case, he decided it was better not to open his eyes. Slowly, the sliver of light disappeared as she quietly closed the door. Lying in the darkness, everything became clear. He must have rested and fallen asleep. Audrey had come home and tucked him in. He wondered vaguely if she still wanted him to entertain her until she lost consciousness. He opened his eyes and realized he wanted to know if she had finished editing the contract, so he sat up and looked at the clock. 11:15, almost midnight. The shock of this realization woke him completely. He got up. As he grabbed the doorknob, he heard a faint ring. Audrey was standing in the hallway, picking up the wall phone. Was she still working on the contract? He opened the door slightly and froze when he heard her first quiet words. "Was it inconvenient for you to go home?" Nigel was there. Brent, now sober, heard half of Audrey's conversation. "No, he's still dead to this world. I gave him 2. He probably won't wake up until morning." "Don't worry, I already changed the sheets. He'll never know." "So, you got your fun, you got your sex. What's number 3 on your wish list?" "You're a dirty bastard, Nigel Price. I thought it might be—" No, you want to know number 5? There was a long pause. "Oh, you're evil! What, with Brent in bed next to us? We'd need 3 Rohypnol pills for that." "No, he'll never find them. At least not yet. I hid them where he'd never think to look." "Okay, then maybe we'll do the 4th and 5th at the same time, but only if we get the contract." "Okay, time to go. See you in the morning." Brent quietly closed the door and returned to the couch. He had been right all along. He was furious, mostly at himself, and he had no intention of forgiving Audrey. Or Nigel, for that matter. She walked to the door, and he pretended to pass out. The door opened slightly, and she whispered his name again. Then she left, no doubt to her marital bed with its clean sheets. Brent lay in the dark and made plans for revenge. It was now obvious that she had found his mother's Rohypnol and tried to knock him out. Damn it. They ate his salads and drank his coffee while they waited for him to pass out. Then they came to his house and slept in his bed. He would never have known if he had drunk all that beer. He would get revenge on both of them. He thought he would never be able to sleep again. But 5 minutes later, he was asleep. The next morning, he woke up around 6, feeling no fatigue. He heard Audrey get up around 7, and soon she appeared in his office with coffee. He sat down and groaned, holding his head. "You slept soundly last night. I covered you and let you sleep." "Thanks. I'm sorry. I must be working too hard. I had dreams about parking lots at the warehouse all night. In reality, his dreams featured torn contracts and dirty sheets. I hope you didn't come home too excited." "It's okay. You must have found someone to sleep with before you passed out." "What? Just kidding?" "Oh, so I'm just as tired as you are." "Okay. What time did you get home?" "Around 8. Brent wondered if she had really been having sex for 3 hours while he was asleep. I have to go. Today is an important day. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. He sat down at the table and thought about what he had heard on the phone. She claimed she had hidden the pills where he would never think to look. Where could that be? Or where couldn't they be? He glanced into the bedroom and stopped. A place he wouldn't think to look. But she didn't know he'd overheard her. They had to be somewhere she could get to quickly, hidden in plain sight. Not in her purse or pocket, somewhere he could see them but not recognize them. Now he remembered that she had also said, bye. That meant it had to be a temporary hiding place. Her mother had offered him a large bottle of aspirin. Brent went to the bathroom. The pills had to be in the cabinet, where they wouldn't attract attention. He opened the bathroom cabinet. One glance, and he knew where they were. His vitamin D bottle was large and white. He wouldn't need to open it until the end of summer. But he looked inside and was not mistaken. He went downstairs and emptied the contents onto the table. The vitamin D had been removed, probably hidden somewhere to be put back later. But she had done more than just fill the bottle with sleeping pills. There was a fine powder at the bottom. She had even rubbed the word Roche off each tablet. Very clever, Audrey, but he was clever too. He returned to the table. That was where he thought best. So this devious woman had been working on Nigel's wish list. The next 2 items, apparently, were unusual sex and that he should lie next to her while he was under the influence of drugs. This guy was strange. And Audrey was even worse. There were plenty of pills, so she wouldn't notice if he took a few. He took 6, put the rest in the jar, and returned it to the bathroom cabinet. It was 10:30 when she called. We got the job. The Chinese are coming to sign the contract. Tomorrow at 11:45, we'll pick them up from Heathrow. Great news. Well done. We'll finish up all the details today, and then Nigel wants to take us out to dinner. Both of us? Of course. He wants to thank you for the salads and coffee. He booked a table at Claudio's. What about his wife? She's at her sister's until tomorrow. He's throwing a party for the whole company this weekend. His wife will be there too, and we can all celebrate again. Great. Nigel said he wants to stop by your place before he leaves. He's never been to your house and really wants to try your old speckled hen beer. I thought we could have a beer before dinner. We'll be around 6. Sounds good. He's never been to your house? Now Brent had to act fast. Last year, he had built an extension to his neighbor's garage with a utility room and a greenhouse. The neighbor's name was Ted, and he was the head of security at Heathrow Airport. First, Brent booked a plane ticket for the next morning using Audrey's credit card. He said he needed special arrangements and agreed to come and explain everything. Then, he called Ted. The girls at the information desk were understanding and helpful. Ted showed up and convinced them that what Brent had asked for had been done before. He would take care of everything. Brent slipped him 25 pounds, and he confirmed that he would be on duty when Brent returned the next day. Around 5:30, Audrey's Citroen drove straight into the garage, and Nigel's Mercedes parked in the driveway. Brent poured 3 beers and slipped sleeping pills into 2 of the glasses. They burst into the house, excited, and introduced themselves. I just poured them, he said. He placed the glasses on the counter. Do you keep it in the refrigerator? Nigel asked. Strictly speaking, it should be at room temperature, but in the summer, we put it in the refrigerator. The home phone rang, and Brent went into the hall. No one answered. That was really clever. He was almost impressed by the bitch. She must have called from her cell phone, which was probably in her pocket. It wasn't hard to guess what had just happened to his beer. Must be the wrong number, he said. No sooner had he sat down than Nigel said, Cheers, and raised his glass. They clinked glasses and drank. This is delicious, he exclaimed. Brent took a small sip, but before swallowing, he puffed out his cheeks as if his mouth were full. Excuse me. I'll be right back. I need some air. I've been sitting at the computer all day. I didn't leave the house yesterday, and half a pint of this drink knocked me off my feet. He stood up, took another sip of beer, and went out through the French windows, taking the glass with him. On the patio, he moved away from his friends and spat the beer onto the roses. He hoped it wouldn't hurt the plants, because he had poured the rest of the beer on them. It hurt Brent to pour out another glass of his favorite drink. He took the undiluted beer he had hidden under a bush, poured some into a glass, and returned to the house. Before sitting down, he raised his glass and made a toast. "To Nigel and my clever wife!" They stood up, clinked glasses, and each took a good sip. Then they chatted and slowly finished their beer. Soon Nigel stood up again and said, "Gan Bei." "What does that mean?" asked Brent. "It's Chinese for bottoms up. We have to finish." Everyone emptied their glasses, and Brent asked, "Anyone else?" "No thanks. We have to leave soon." "Then come on over to our living room." Only 5 minutes had passed, and they were already leaving the room. As soon as they were out, he took Nigel to the guest room, where he taped his legs together with duct tape, then his arms, securing them in front of him so they would be easier to carry. He needed more tape to cover his mouth, although he doubted it would be necessary any time soon. He packed the selected items into Audrey's bag so it would be ready for tomorrow's flight and emptied her purse. Then the finishing touches. He checked Nigel's pockets, where he found his home address and information about his arrival at Heathrow from Beijing in his wallet. The Chinese men were called Mr. Cheng and Mr. Wen. Brent wrote their names on a large piece of cardboard. Among Nigel's contacts were Harriet H. and Harriet M. That was his wife, her home, and mobile numbers. He sent her a message. "Won't be back until tomorrow. Get ready for a big surprise." He turned off his phone and went to the kitchen, where he carefully washed the beer glasses, not forgetting the one in the garden. Then he dissolved a Rohypnol tablet in 2 bottles of mineral water. He set the alarm for 4 in the morning. Finally, he called the moving company to confirm the order, then went upstairs to have sex with his soon-to-be ex-wife one last time. After a wild night, he slept surprisingly well and checked on them both at 4 o'clock. The next morning, after parking Nigel's Mercedes at Heathrow Airport, Brent gave him the last sip of water and left him to sleep in the trunk. Then he woke Audrey. For the first time in a long time, he put on a suit. "Come on, you'll be late for signing an important contract." "What? What time is it?" "Here, drink this and wake up." He called Ted, who met him at the information desk. The same 2 girls were on duty, and Brent showed them Audrey's passport and ticket and confirmed yesterday's story. She was terrified of flying. She had taken a beginner's course organized by the airline and was now flying for the first time. She had been prescribed a mild sedative, but she was still afraid. I arranged to meet her at the boarding gate. She insists that I accompany her there. She was allowed to check in early, so she only has this small bag. Ted said he would drive Brent, and the girls called the flight attendant and told her the whole story. She agreed to accompany them. The cleaners were still working on the plane, but Audrey's seat was ready. Brent booked seat 40K at the back of the cabin by the window so that no one would walk past her. He put her bag under the seat in front of her, fastened her seatbelt, and persuaded her to finish her water. "Take a nap. Nigel will take care of everything." Brent gave Ted the remaining $25 as agreed and was escorted back to the information desk. He assured the staff that his wife was safely settled on the plane. Her flight wasn't scheduled to leave for another 2 hours, but he stayed at the airport. Then, armed with a Starbucks coffee, he went to the arrivals hall. The flight to Beijing was on schedule, and 15 minutes later, passengers began boarding the plane. They only had small carry-on bags, so they were the first to board. He held up his card. The interpreter was charming. "Where is Mr. Priss?" she asked. Audrey said they spoke English well, but it still sounded like Priss. "Welcome to London, distinguished guests. I am Mr. Priss's driver and will take you to where the contract will be signed." He took their bags. When they were comfortably seated in the back of the Mercedes, he opened the trunk and put the bags where Nigel had been sleeping. Getting behind the wheel, he explained, "Mr. Priss was up all night making changes to your contract. He's resting now while I drive." The woman translated as he drove to Nigel's house. He thought Harriet should already be home. "We're not going to sign the contract at your company. Sorry for the delay. We need to pick up the witness to your signatures." While the interpreter was speaking, Brent sent Harriet a message from Nigel's phone. "I've been sleeping with Audrey for several weeks, but don't worry, I'm home." He left them sitting on the driveway and walked away. They craned their necks and watched him go. He looked back and saw Harriet run out of the house, throw Nigel's phone into the bushes, and hail a taxi. He spent the rest of the day watching the movers load Audrey's belongings into the truck. Soon, all her belongings had been taken to storage. It was difficult to predict when Audrey would need her things, so paying for 3 months in advance seemed reasonable. That evening, with a bottle of Old Speckled Hen, Brent wondered what she was doing. She should have arrived in Beijing around that time. Of course, she hadn't checked any luggage, so she only had what she was wearing. He had picked out a light summer dress for her. It would be hot in Beijing, so he had been careful not to pack a bra or panties. He wondered if she would be searched. He took the bottle of drugs out of her bag. All she had in her purse was a plastic bag with 24 Rohypnol pills. He wondered if they were common in China and if they were legal. There was no phone, no money, no credit cards, no passport, no return ticket in her purse. All that remained was her carry-on bag. There was nothing interesting in it, except for a bottle of Old Speckled Hen, a few condoms, and a tube of gel. What would they think of this in Beijing?